What's going on, guys and gals? This is AutoTech, and today I'm going to show you how to remove and install the rear wheel and tire on your Tiger 800. So jumping right into it, one of the things that you want to have is either a rear stand or the model with the center stand. I'm going to be working off the rear stand today just because I have one. I've got the spools, and then you're loading the suspension a little bit. So for the actual install process, that's where it'll be key, because it comes down to like adjusting the chain, and you kind of want to have the weight of the bike on there. If you're just working off the center stand, it'll be pretty similar, except when it comes to the adjusting, not a big deal. You can definitely work around it. This is an easy to do job, a little bit of basic skills, some basic tools. Other than that, you know, let's just get right to it. So using a 1/2-inch ratchet and a 27mm, let's go ahead and loosen this axle nut. Now just be careful when you're, twisting this, that you don't like roll the bike forward or something like that. You don't have to take the nut right off just yet. We're just going to loosen it really good for now. We'll come back to that in a minute. Now using a 12mm and a 13mm wrench, you're going to hold the adjusting bolt and then loosen the, the other way, left for loosen, the lock nut. And once you get it just kind of a decent little turn, you can just go ahead and wind that right up there. Like, you don't have to touch it right to the end, but you definitely want to have some room to move that in. And then we are going to basically wind this in on both sides. So you come around to this side as well, again with the 12mm, get that on there, and then go ahead and loosen that jam nuts. And then same thing as the other side, you're just going to thread that right up, not all the way, just a decent distance. And then we are going to wind this adjusting bolt in a little bit. Now that you've got the adjusters wound right up and the axle loose, you're gonna find that you can actually just move this wheel right forward, right on. Don't get too ahead of yourself though and start unhooking that chain and popping this axle out, otherwise you're gonna be like, oh man, I forgot some stuff. But what we're gonna do is come around to this side. Now, I don't like leaving ABS sensors in, because that's just asking for a mishap. Like when you're going to put it up, you scrape the end of the sensor off. So the opening for this little rubber grommet is actually at the bottom. So just hook your fingers right there, and then you want to try and get your thumbs on this. Don't use the wire and pull it out, because that's not good. And this is actually open, so we're just going to take this off and put it somewhere safe for right now. And when we're done, we're going to put it in a bag, just so that it doesn't go missing while we're, off doing stuff. To remove the ABS sensor, it is a T30 Torx. And you're just going to go ahead and take this bolt out. So when I went to pull this bolt out, this washer fell out from in behind the ABS sensor. So if you didn't catch it when it all kind of hit the ground, just remember, we'll come back to this at the install, that the washer goes on the inside of the ABS sensor. And I'm guessing that's so that it has the proper air gap, gets the proper reading. But we're gonna go ahead and remove all this carefully, keep it with the other stuff. My ABS sensor basically just wants to fall right out, which is good. If yours is somewhat stuck, try and grab it like from here and just kind of twist it to break it free. Don't be putting a screwdriver in there and popping it out, because all you're going to do is just cock it sideways and break it. I've done that a few times at work on vehicles. That's how I know that. But we're going to go ahead and take this out. and we're just going to kind of set it there for now. And now we're going to move on to the brakes. For the brake caliper assembly, I always try and take it all apart with the pads and everything still in it, and then I try to put it back together with it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But for this front bolt, you're going to notice it's a little bit bigger, and that is a 14 and not very tight. So you don't have to put a whole lot of jam behind that. And for this other one, it is a 12 millimeter. So go ahead and take both of these bolts out and add them to your pile. Alright, so now before you go get gung-ho and pull that off of there, get yourself 2 zip ties and just kind of start them like that. Now grab a hold of it and slide it rearwards and then upwards and off to the side here. Grab your ABS sensor, and then we're gonna drop that and have to get it. But feed this through. Turns out you don't need to, so I'm just gonna go a little bit further with that. Oh no, I guess 2 works. 2 works pretty good. And get this started here. It's awkward. As you can see, I'm using 2 hands and it's still awkward. Alright, so we want to make sure that's out of our workway and not going to fall. ABS sensors up there. That's good to go. Now, you don't want to just set this off to the side. You don't want to just curl it back here and hope for the best, because it's really bad for your brake lines. So if you kink them, you're going to lose pressure when you're trying to apply, because there's going to be a restriction in the line. And if your caliper actually falls off, what can happen is it'll stretch the line, and you won't notice it on the outside because there's a little bit of a like rubber coating, but it can actually break the inside of the line. And then under a heavy braking situation, you're going to get like a balloon that kind of pops out to the side, and then you'll lose braking pressure. So it's just good practice to always kind of keep this stuff up, secure. Whether you go over here and secure it, but then it'll probably be in the way of your hands. So just up here, not a big deal. Good to go. So now we're pretty well ready to start pulling that axle out. So we're going to come around back to this side. Continue loosening this. Just go ahead, get this right off. And then there is a washer behind it. And since it comes out nicely on mine, I'm just going to go ahead and take that off. There is a front and a back on this, so that's not too hard to screw up. I don't believe that there's an inside-outside. So if you accidentally screw that up, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but you can see where the washer was. So I'm just going to kind of set these out of the way for now. And then we're going to come around to this side, fix our stool a little bit. Get it a little bit further forward, push on the axle just a bit. Get this started. And now I'm going to see if on this bike we can actually unhook the chain. Oh, we can. Nice. Cool. All right. That makes life easy, because on previous bikes I've had to like hold the tire up, get the chain started, and then do it. But yeah, this looks like it'll be nicely out of our way, because now we can slide it back. Cool. And the chain guards aren't going to be an issue. So now we're ready to party. I like to get my toe under here, because the assembly is not that heavy. Like, you can lift it with your toes. So get a good grasp on the rim, and then just work this out and set it down somewhere safe. And you're gonna have this bracket to deal with. So we're gonna set that down and get the bracket out of there. And my washers and stuff didn't fall out, so that's good. Now we back it up, and ta-da, we are clear. Now let's check this out. There is indeed a spacer, but it doesn't seem like it wants to come out all that easy, whereas this one does. So I'm gonna get this one on this side, and then I'm gonna use, well, maybe I can get it with my, there we go, I got it with my finger. So the left side is the short spacer, the right side is the big spacer. Now this one looks like it can go either way. This one definitely cannot. So don't worry too much about screwing that stuff up. So now be very careful with this, because if you drop it this way, you could actually kick this sprocket in, like kink it. That's not going to be fun. That's going to be expensive. And then when it comes to this side, it looks like the rotor will kind of clear it, but I'm actually just going to set this on top of another tire, then I don't have to worry about it. Now is a good chance to actually check your wheel bearings. Make sure they turn nicely, don't feel rough, don't have any play in them. And same deal on this side, make sure there's nothing rough, no play. Take a look at your seals, make sure there's no mud chewing them up. That'd be a big thing when it comes to an adventure bike, is because you're gonna get dust and mud and potentially rocks that are gonna chew this seal up, let stuff in, wreck your bearings. So we probably should have checked the actual bearings on the bike that way before we took it apart, because then it would be a good time to get new ones. So since I forgot to do that, when you have it up in the air, before you go to loosen it, see if you can kick the wheel, like grab the wheel and see if you can actually like kick it at all. If you can do anything other than just spin it, like if you can go up and down or side to side or anything like that, you need new wheel bearings. And make sure to check everything else out as well. Because with stuff that has play, you could be wearing on your axles, you could be wearing into your swing arm. You don't know until you get in there and thoroughly check it. So I'm going to take this to work, and I'm going to go ahead and mount up my stuff. So I will see you guys in a flash. All right, and with the power of magic on the videos, we are back. Tires all mounted up. Good to go. We're ready for the reassembly. Now, off camera, I went ahead and wiped everything down, got all the old grease off, all the old whatever off. It's just good practice. So now we're basically ready to just start reassembling. So right before we start just putting stuff together, let's take a little bit of brake lube and lubricate where these pads slide, just because it's tough to get your finger in there after. So, you don't need a whole heck of a lot on there for this part. So that's good there. And then we are going to take some nickel anti-seize, and where that brake caliper bracket goes, we're just going to put a little bit of a swipe there just on all the contact sides. And that's just so that later on down the road everything's easy to disassemble, everything moves the way it should. If you don't plan on buying the bike or owning the bike very long, then go ahead and just red Loctite everything, put it as tight as you can, and then good luck to the next guy. So we're gonna keep using that anti-seize for a moment, and we're just going to put some swipes up and down the axle shaft, just like a Friday night when you're all alone. And lastly, after you lubricate that shaft, go ahead and get your spacer and just put a little bit around it and a little bit through it. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the other spacer. Just a little bit on the outside, a little bit on the inside. And the reason you just go on the outside is just so that when it's in that seal, it has a nice lubricated surface to sit on. Just good practice. All right, here's where the fun begins. Go ahead and get your tire just kind of somewhat in there. In case you forgot, the sprocket goes on the chain side, the brakes go on the brake side. Good to go. Don't forget about your spacer. The weird looking one goes on the right side, and the stubby one goes on the left side. Make sure those are seated in there properly. Yeah, good to go. So now, this is always the fun part. This is probably the hardest part of doing a tire, is getting it back in, lining everything up, and sliding the shaft through. So don't forget about this thing, and remember that this slides on that, I'm trying to think of the name here, where the caliper goes. It slides on that bracket. Don't know why I'm having some brain damage at the moment, but that's okay. And in case you forgot, it goes in like this. So you want the ABS sensor to the back. So we're going to get that on there, maybe. That was actually a little trickier than I thought it was going to be. I was just having a heck of a time kind of getting everything to line up, and then it seemed like the spacers just kept catching everything. But we are there now. So once you get it up, get everything through, just make sure that your bracket is still hooked properly, your spacers are there, that your other spacer is there, and that, you know, it turns all right. So now what we're going to do is get this axle nut and washer back on, and then what I like to do is I like to touch it down, like snug it right up, and then just back it off just enough that the wheel will move again. And the reason that I like to do it that way is I've just found if you leave the swing arm like super loose, as soon as you adjust your chain and then you cinch it all back down, your chain measurement is just way out. So I find with putting a new wheel on, if you just touch it down, like tighten it, you know, like 30 foot-pounds kind of thing, just a snugness, and then back it off to the point where you can slide the wheel again, you'll be a lot better off at the end. I don't know why it does that, but it just seems every time I put a wheel on and then do a chain and then tighten it down, suddenly like my chain's like lost half its measurement almost. So when you're doing your normal chain adjustments, you know, you're really only backing that thing off like a half turn, so you're never actually fully loosening it. So now, keeping clear of that chain, let's get that tire all the way to the front, which I don't think I loosened it quite enough. There we go. And we're gonna go ahead and walk this chain back on. Once you get the top kind of hooked, you're pretty well good to go there. You know, just wheel the tire back. Now we're just gonna slide this back to sort of semi get the chain where we kind of want it. Now that we've kind of sort of got it where we want it to go, take these adjusters and just turn them out by hand until they're just touching those adjustment blocks. Now that you've got those adjusters just kind of touched there, carefully hold your caliper, cut that zip tie. I guess the way I routed it, I'm going to have to cut it in 2 spots. That's okay. And now for the fun part, you want to hook these pads into this bracket. So again, a little bit of patience. You know, you don't have to force anything. Just kind of slowly get that in there. And ta-da! You can look through the rim on the other side to make sure that this inside pad is seated in the bracket. Now that your caliper is in place and you've ensured that the pads are in the proper position, go ahead and take your caliper pins, put a little bit of lube on them, and a little bit of blue on the threads. Now that you've got a little bit of lube on them, a little bit of blue, go ahead and just get these started, and then just touch them down and we'll torque them once they're snug. Now, I don't know what it is with Euro bikes and Newton meters. Like, nobody uses Newton meters. It's stupid. They want the smaller bolt, the 12 millimeter, to 22 Newton meters, which is 195 inch-pounds. So we're gonna go ahead and torque this one. And then we are going to torque the 14 millimeter. When I'm saying like 12 millimeter and 14 millimeter, I'm talking about the head size, because I know nobody actually cares about the actual thread size. So the 14 millimeter head is going to be 27 Newton meters, which looks like 235 inch-pounds. So we're going to go ahead and torque that one down. I'm going to install the ABS sensor next. You can wait until the very end if you want to. Your choice. I'm just going to do it right now. So a little bit of blue on the bolt, and then I always like to just put a little smear right around the base where it mounts in the bracket. Now this ABS sensor doesn't seem to be a like interference fit, like it's not tight, so having it get stuck probably isn't going to be a real factor on this one, which I noticed once I took it apart. So in case you forgot from the assembly, you're going to take the bracket, put the bolt through it, and then you're going to put that through the sensor. And then this actually isn't a washer. I took a flip through the manual, and this is actually a shim. So that's why it goes on that side of the ABS sensor. The actual air gap, let's find that for you, is 0.1 to 1.5 millimeters. Now, if you're putting a new sensor in, yes, absolutely 100% measure that. But for this install, all you did was just removed it, and now you're putting it back. So I'm not going to be too terribly concerned about the actual like gap of it, you know, because we haven't changed anything. We didn't change the rotor, we didn't change the ABS wheel, we didn't change the sensor, and when I had everything off, I didn't bang it, drop anything on it, or lift the tire by it, so I know it's gonna be okay. Now that you've got that installed, shim's on the proper side, bracket's all there, you're gonna take your T30 and you're going to torque this to 9 Newton meters, which is 75 inch-pounds. So now the ABS sensor is installed correctly, and we're going to reinstall this little rubber grommet and push it back up into that bracket, which it's going to be a tedious little job here. So I'll let you guys fight with this for a second. I'm going to fight with it for a second, and we're going to check back together. This seems like a good spot to just chill for a second, have a sip of your coffee, because all this hunched over work and stuff gets kind of hard on your back. So we're at a point here where you can just chill for a minute and then come back to it after you recharge. All right, jumping back into it now that you've topped up the old caffeine and nicotine levels. What you want to do for the chain is your swing arm on this model of bike at least has little notches in it so that it can help you for alignment purposes. Try and get it by hand to a point on both sides where the chain is semi-close-ish, but not like quite there yet. So like right now I'm just at the third little bump in, and then the third little bump in, and then you're going to check the chain. Now I'm still quite a ways out. The spec for this bike is 20 to 30 millimeters. Now I'm not sure what that is in inches, slightly over an inch. An inch is like what, 25 millimeters, 25.4 or something like that. So one easy way to do it is you can actually take your 27 mil socket, because that's going to be at the, you know, the higher end of your scale, and you can just kind of hold it in place. And I mean, you know, you can see like from the bottom of the socket, I'm going way above the top of it. So I'm probably at like 35 millimeters right now. So in small adjustments at a time, you want to like turn this one out a half turn, that one out a half turn, recheck it, because once you start to get close, it seems to go really quick. You know, like you can adjust like a 1/4 inch of this thing, not seem to get anything, but as soon as you're like within that range, like a half turn on this, suddenly the chain, you can play the guitar on it just about. So let's spend a couple of minutes just kind of tweaking, checking, and then we'll check back in. So after a little bit of playing around, I'd have to say I'm where I need to be. I ended up basically from where I was, like just barely covering that third little notch. You can just sort of see a sliver of it. Now I'm super picky when it comes to the like rear tire alignment. So I mean, I like quadruple check it, and that's just my thing. But one thing you can also do is give the back of the tire a couple of kicks just to make sure everything is all the way to the front, and that your alignment is still exactly where it needs to be. Now, the chain, you're better to err on the slightly loose side than the too tight side. Now, yes, I know if the chain is loose, you're going to cause wear to your sprockets, but if the chain is too tight, you're going to wreck the bearings in your transmission. So which one's more expensive? But, you know, they give you such a wide range, like 20 to 30 millimeters, like that's quite a bit. So, you know, again, using my 27 millimeter socket, I mean, I'm probably right around that 27 to 30 millimeter range. So that's going to be pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 12 millimeter wrench and our 13 millimeter wrench and just kind of holding this one in place. So holding that one in place so that it doesn't move. Just snug down your adjuster. Now, there is a torque spec for this, but good luck getting a torque wrench in there without like crow's feet. So just snug on both sides. So now using your torque wrench set to 110 Newton meters, which looks like 80 foot-pounds, we're gonna go ahead and just torque this down. Now you can see like how many turns I'm kind of getting out of it from the point where I had it moving. So this is where the stuff kind of becomes a problem sometimes, because now you've cinched it a little bit more. So now your alignment might be slightly out, or your chain adjustment might be slightly out. Now my chain seems to be the exact same as it was, so that makes me happy. I've had times where I cinch it back down and then suddenly the chain is just super tight, and it's like, it's frustrating, but it happens. All you got to do is just back this off, play with them a touch more. For me, it's winter time, so an extra 10 minutes worth of chain adjustment isn't going to ruin my day. Another thing that's a good thing to practice is a few locations on the chain. Double check your adjustments. I feel if you have like a really tight spot and then a really loose spot, you should probably be checking why. That's just my 2 cents, because you know, if this is machine true, your front sprocket's machine true, why do you have a major chain adjustment difference depending on where the chain is? It should be almost the same the whole way around. Of course it'll be slightly different, but if you've got, holy, it's really tight here, and then you turn the wheel halfway and then suddenly it's like, wow, I've got a bunch of slack there, I feel you should be checking into why that is. But now that you've got your chain all adjusted, everything's torqued down, your adjusters are torqued, I guess the last thing to do would be to make sure that that rear brake works, which it seems to be doing just fine. So there you go. You have now removed and installed your rear tire. The advantage to this is, like, no, you may not be like me and able to change your own tires and stuff like that. However, a lot of shops have really good deals for loose tires. I know there's one going around here. Can't remember their name off the top of my head, but they offer, it was like $19.99 tire changeover. So it's like 20 bucks. Yet if you take your bike in, you're gonna pay, it was like an hour, hour and a half or hour or something like that. So just by doing this yourself, you can save well over $100. So that one time that you do that will actually cover the cost of your rear stand. Something to consider. And then you know everything is lubed, everything is Loctited, everything is good to go. So that's the advantage to that. If you guys like this, make sure you go on and hit that subscribe button. You know, if you have any questions, make sure you leave them down in the comments and I will answer them as best as I can. But I hope that this was a pretty straightforward install, minus the screwing around with the spacers going up. But that's just the way that it goes sometimes. A little patience, don't force anything. There you go, you're a happy guy. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for taking the time and watching.